Hello, nonprofit leaders. I'm Sarah Olivieri, your host, and this podcast is here to assist people like you, executive directors, board members, and other nonprofit leaders, make a bigger impact with insights, tips, and lessons learned from nonprofit leaders and experts. Having been an executive director, a board member, and now a consultant and coach, I truly understand the challenges you face. And that's why I'm here. I'm all about working smarter, not harder, so you can make a bigger impact without the burnout. And so is our sponsor, DonorBox. DonorBox isn't just a suite of helpful fundraising tools, it's a partner that helps you raise more money and supports you in retaining your donors. I love their forward-thinking approach. Visit donorbox.org to learn more. And don't forget to sign up for the Inspired Nonprofit Leadership newsletter, where you'll get bite-sized, actionable tips just for nonprofit leaders like you, delivered weekly to your inbox. Sign up at inspirednonprofitleadership.com/sign up. Okay, let's dive into today's episode. Today's topic is positive procrastination. Today, we're going to talk about what to do with your procrastination and how to turn it from a negative into a positive. So, yes, I have procrastinated in the past. I perfected procrastination while I was an undergraduate student at the University of Chicago. This is the famous University of Chicago. And right over here is the International Relations building, where I took many classes as I was an international studies major. And during my years at school, first, I was so amazed. I wrote a paper the week that it was due. And then I was so amazed. I wrote a paper the day before it was due. And then I amazed myself even further. I wrote a paper the night before it was due, pulling an all-nighter. And finally, I'd reached the pinnacle of my procrastination when I wrote a paper the morning that it was due. And that morning it was due at noon. And the only way to get it to campus in time from where I lived, which was way over past this picture, was to get a friend to drive with me in my car to this building, because you couldn't count on parking here. So I had to make sure I had a friend who could wait in the car with me so I could pull right up to this building here and run my paper up to where it was being collected just moments before the last minute. Now, this didn't necessarily help my paper writing, and years have passed. And I now have a way of understanding procrastination and dealing with procrastination that turns it into a positive rather than a negative. And that's what I'm going to teach you about in this training. So here's the problem with the problem of procrastination is we view it as a flaw, and we focus on changing ourselves. Have you ever said, I gotta stop procrastinating, And I made sure to double check my research before I prepared this presentation. I came up with there's lots and lots of views. They're studying procrastination. But this quote really summed up the problem of procrastination right now. This person from Carleton University said, he summed up procrastination saying, you know what you ought to do, and you're not able to bring yourself to do it. It's that gap between intention and as many of you know, I'm a big nonviolent communication fan, and think about judgment in language. And what is it? Why do you ought to do it? Why should you be the one who has to change? My message for you is I like you, especially all of you procrastinators, just the way you are, just like Mr. Rogers. And I'll tell you, instead of you changing, I want your task to change. And this is what I'm calling the Wabi-Sabi procrastination mindset. Procrastination is not a flaw in you. In fact, I'm going to argue, and I'm going to sneeze. No, I'm not. I'm going to argue that you should embrace your procrastination as your body or your mind telling you that something needs to change with what you're doing. It's not you that needs to change, it's what you're doing that needs to change. And there are 3 areas to help you break down and understand what might be going wrong with what you're choosing to do. So you are working in a way that doesn't account for how you personally respond to expectations. More on that in a bit. You have inaccurately assessed the nature or size of the task that you're procrastinating on. More on that too. Or you're working on something that's not exactly your forte and you probably shouldn't be doing it at all. I'll tell you, almost every time I've been running a team, when a team comes to me or a team member comes to me and says, I'm really not getting this done. I don't know what's wrong. 90% of the time my answer to them is, we really shouldn't be doing that. The reason why it's giving you so much grief is we were on the wrong track. Let's eliminate it altogether and figure out what we should be doing. So let's break these down. This is a micro training, so we're going quickly. There's a fantastic book. You should all read it. It's not very long, called The Four Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin. At the very least, you should go take the quiz on her website. We'll put the link when we send out the recording to this, but you can also just Google Four Tendencies quiz. What Gretchen Rubin found out is there are basically 4 buckets that people fall into with how they respond to expectation. And this is going to be a big lock for how to deal with procrastination. Oftentimes, people with procrastination, they work well when they hit right up against that deadline. Other people, I know accountability partners. I have a few accountability partners, although the truth for me is that my accountability partner usually gets a lot of benefit from me holding them accountable, but I don't usually get a ton of benefit from them holding me accountable. I've wondered why. Why does this work for people, but it doesn't help me? Well, if you are an obliger, which means that you do what you have to do and you don't want to let others down, but it's okay to let yourself down. Obligers do really well with another person holding them accountable to the things they actually need to do for themselves. I happen to be, surprise, surprise, a questioner. So for me, I have to make sure that I have a really good justification for what I'm doing. And if it makes sense to me, then I'll actually do it. And there won't be a procrastination issue. So once you have an understanding that not everybody responds to expectations in the same way, but it's not that complicated, there are only 4 different ways that people tend to respond to expectations, you can know how to set yourself up to succeed even better and not make procrastination be one of the issues. Oftentimes, when there's procrastination, it's a sign that you are mismatched with how you're holding yourself or having someone else hold you to expectations. And Gretchen Rubin has a bunch of tips in this book for how to communicate or set up expectations for each of the different 4 tendencies. So the next thing is to break down the task that you're procrastinating on in writing and align your expectations. And usually it's one of 2 issues. The reason why you're procrastinating is because the project was way bigger than you realized. You're like, oh, this is a simple little thing. And really it's huge. And so you're scared and it's daunting. You don't need to change. The nature of the task needs to change. And when you realize how big it is, you might allow yourself more resources or get more people involved in getting it done. On the flip side, sometimes you might be overthinking it. The task actually might be easier, or you haven't really defined the definition of done. And done is super simple, and you were all worried and holding off because you were worried. And in fact, it could have been done very easily, and it wouldn't have been a big deal, and you probably would have had fun. Here's an example of overthinking it. Sometimes things need to be scheduled out and put on social media. Sounds big and complicated, but it's as simple as pulling up a calendar, drafting a note for each post for each day, and then making sure somebody else posts it. You don't have to think about fancy software. 1 post a day is not that hard. You can pre-schedule them. Not a big deal. Here's an example of a project that's typically way bigger. As some of you know, I used to own a marketing agency and I have built many websites professionally. Lots of people think, oh, I'll just build my own website. No big deal. Well, I'll just show you quickly what a professional website launch checklist look like. This is simple. This is in fact, it's taking long to load on my screen here. This is a very long checklist. And a lot of these things encompass different specialties. So it means a whole team had to be involved with creating all these things to check them off. So you thought it was a simple thing, but really it's a very large, complicated thing. Now, the third thing is procrastination telling you that you're doing something that you really just shouldn't be doing because not your forte. I have a tool. Some of you here have used it. If you go to pivotground.com/accountability, you can download the tool with some instructions. But this is a simple tool for delegating, systematizing, and automating the things you're doing by prioritizing what is in your zone of genius, those things that energize you and you can do more of. I don't know anybody who procrastinates on their zone of genius. Sometimes we tell ourselves, oh, the thing I love doing, it can't be good for us to spend time doing that. Well, get that self-talk out of your head. You want to be doing the things that are in your zone of genius. Then there are the things that you can do. They don't energize you. They kind of drain you. You're fine at them. Maybe you're great at them, but they don't energize you. You want to get rid of those to the greatest extent possible. And then there are the things that are not exactly your forte. You're either bad at them, or if you're good at them, but they really, really drain you, get those babies off your plate. Trash them, delegate them. I don't care what you do with them. Don't do them. Do not do them yourself. And if you have to do them, figure out a way to break them into their itty bitty pieces and try to get rid of the things that are the hardest for you. So here's kind of the cheat sheet to when it comes to not doing things that aren't your forte. You could delegate it, right? Just straight up delegate it. That's kind of the easy, obvious solution. But oftentimes we're stuck, especially if you're a leader. And I know there are some nonprofit leaders watching this because you're my people, that you can't delegate the whole thing. But what you can do is really think about it. Go through step by step. Which is the piece that's really tripping you up? Or maybe there's a couple pieces, and find what that piece is and delegate that piece, and then you can do the rest. Here's an example from these very micro trainings that I do on YouTube. I used to have a hard time putting the slides together. And then I realized that it was the specific part that was tripping me up was creating the very first slide. So first I created a template and I would copy that over, and that was good, but it wasn't great. And if you go back and look at my older videos, you'll see kind of a boring, they're this color intro slide, but it helped me get through and I was able to do them with more ease. But I still wasn't happy with that. And so I'd go in, I'd copy my first slide and be like, that's not really how I want it to look, but I better let that go because I won't get it done at all if I focus too much on that. And finally, I came up with a process. Turns out that at Pivot Ground, our communications manager, Rachel, is fantastic at creating the graphics. She creates the graphics for the micro trainings, and she creates the graphic and she puts it into my slide building tool with the description for the micro training. And then I'm set up to do all the things of creating the content for the slides that I really love doing and that don't trip me up at all. So that's how I delegate a small piece of the process, and it makes an exponential impact on the ease at which I create slides. So wherever you feel yourself getting stuck, if you can't delegate the whole thing, dig deep, go through step by step and ask yourself, which part of this process is what's really tripping me up? Is it the reading? Is it the writing? Is it the publishing? Is it the scheduling? I'll give you one more example. I have been on a lot of podcasts, over 50 now. And what I realized is get me to apply for a podcast and I feel nervous and it's myself and I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to say. But just put podcast on my schedule and tell me to show up on the call. And I have a great time and I love doing them. So I delegate out the part of the process where I have to apply for the podcast and get it scheduled on my calendar. And I just do the part that doesn't bother me at all, that's very much in my zone of genius and that I never procrastinate on because it's all stuff that I just love doing. It's the fun stuff. And last but not least, if you'd like to talk about procrastination, delegation, anything related to running your nonprofit, fundraising, leadership, go to pivotground.com/apply. One final note. I want you to do the things you love, even if you have judged that they're not as important for your organization. I'm going to challenge you, even though I don't know what your thing is, and by all means give you a reason, but I'm going to challenge you to say that is a misconception for yourself. The things that you love doing the most in your organization are probably the most important things that you can be doing, even if they feel too good and too easy to be true.
You've been listening to Inspired Nonprofit Leadership. Thanks so much for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode or the bonus episodes. And while you're at it, please leave a rating and review and be sure to share with your friends and colleagues. Tune in every week for more useful insights and wisdom on nonprofit leadership. Thanks so much for all you do for the communities you serve. Until next time, all the best.